Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I am super excited to be reviewing Deathless Beast by Andrew D. Meredith. Deathless Beast is a fantasy novel by my friend Andrew Meredith, and this book has taken me some time to decide how I wanted to talk about it and to be able to articulate how I felt about the story, the characters, and the world that Andrew has created in this book. The way this review is going to work is I'm going to talk a little bit about the plot, a little bit about the characters, the world building, the writing style, etc., and then give just kind of my overall thoughts at the end. This will be a spoiler-free review. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to read the back. Far too many blame their own bad luck on Hannon and Ralia Clow. When opportunity knocks, they leap to put their past behind them. In the turmoil of a holy order fraught with lies, frustration, and heresy, the paladin Jinned Brazstein is called to deeper faith. When Katium takes up a seemingly ageless seed pod from a botanist's desk, she cannot guess at the change it will bring. While life stirs in that seed, while the path to deeper faith beckons, while there is coin to be made upon the road, darkness moves, a winged, deathless wrath invisible to the gods. All would-be heroes must give their lives or be made illustration for those who've still to come and try to fall or rise above their station. Deathless Beast is the first installment in Andrew Meredith's Collation saga. There are currently 2 books out. Bone Shroud is book 2, and that is also on the shelf behind me. I have not read that one yet, so I'm only going to talk about this one. Characters are my favorite thing to talk about, so that's where we're going to start. The characters in this novel, there's such a great variety of them, and that's one of the things that I always love and appreciate about multi-POV stories. Hannon and Ralia are a brother and sister pair that are part of a group called the Sentinels, and they are kind of guardians, mercenaries that will oftentimes accompany caravans through this world that need protection from the dangers of the wild and from bandits, etc. And so they kind of make their money just protecting caravans, traveling here and there. Sometimes they get involved with some maybe slightly nefarious purposes because they are just here to make the money and to protect the caravan they've been hired for. Hannon and Ralia are a really interesting brother and sister pair. I always love sibling bonds in stories, and what I loved about these two a lot is that they're a great contrast to each other, and you really get to see how different they are and how that manifests in how they do their job. The POVs from Hannon and Ralia kind of are a contrast in themselves to the other POVs that happen within this story because they are not part of the religious order, while the other POVs are, which was kind of a nice break now and then throughout the story to go back to this caravan, to go back to this band of mercenaries who do end up getting, wrapped up in a lot of things. I really appreciated that they provided that kind of contrast to the other POVs. The next POV is probably my favorite, and I didn't think he was my favorite until the end of the book, but I ended up really, really loving his character, and that is Jinned Brazstein. Jinned is a paladin. He is a protector in this holy order that permeates basically the entire book. That's a major, major part of the story in the world. And Jinned is a very interesting character, and there's only so much I can say in the spoiler-free version. As the story goes along, Jinned's honor is called into question multiple times, and it's just a great story arc of us getting to know him as a character and having more and more details about him showing up as we get farther towards the end of the book. And by the end, his was the character that I was most interested in seeing, like, where he's going in the next books. He represents to me a lot of the philosophical questions that were coming up in this book and really was making me think through what he was going through and what he represented. The third POV is Katium. Katium is a young woman who is the niece and assistant / doctor to the matriarch, one of the leaders of the Holy Order. And Katium is very smart. She loves learning, and she kind of has has this yearning for freedom and a life of her own, because she's kind of tied to wherever her aunt, the matriarch, goes. Katium is a step behind, and she's always caring for her aunt's every need. And you can see how much she wants a point in her life where she's able to make choices for herself, and that kind of becomes a major theme throughout the story. It's an interesting POV because I think a lot of us constantly ask, you know, what would we be doing if we weren't in where we are at? Where would we be? What could we do with it? And Katium is a very youthful, kind of optimistic, I want to go out in the world and learn things, POV, which again offers a really nice contrast to Hannon and Ralia, who are also younger POVs, but they've been around things and they know a little bit more about what the world is like than she does. I always love when an author chooses to give us a really good variety of characters to tell the story, and I feel like Andrew really pulled that off here. Let's talk about the plot. So the plot of this story, there's a lot of traveling that goes on in this story, because there's a build-up that's happening. It's a slow burn. We're moving the pieces into play for the rest of the series. There are definitely a couple of action scenes that happen in the story that are very intense, but that's not the focus. We're used to a lot of times in fantasy where the book just throws us into the action right away, and this is not that type of a book. This one takes some time to really get to know the characters and their motives and how they feel about the world they're in and what their fears and desires and motives are, so that by the time, I'm assuming, we reach book 2, 3, 4, etc. in the series, that we'll really have a good foundation with these characters to understand who they are and why they do the things they do going forward. There were definitely parts in the plot where things slowed down quite a bit, and that's something where I think I was being challenged as a reader, because I do tend to like the type of book that throws me into the action and just moves at a really good pace all the way through. And this book really challenged me on that in a really good way, because it wasn't slow for the sake of just things were dragging. Things were happening. I just needed to slow myself down a little bit and pay attention to the details that I was being told. Let's get into world building, because I think this is the part of the video that I will probably gush about the most. This book easily took my book award in 2022 for the best world building. I am absolutely mind blown by the level of detail that Andrew is able to fit into this story without info dumping. We talk about this all the time in fantasy, that there are so many books that in order to tell you all of the things you need to know about the story, they just either in the prologue, or there will be a character that just, you know, blurts out this massive info dump somewhere in the early parts of the story. And that can get really tedious really quickly. The amount of detail that is just everywhere in this book blew my mind. I was like, how? It's amazing to me that he's able to get that amount of detail in without info dumping. It's amazing. And I know that it's something that I was really trying to pay attention to for my own writing, because worlds are very complicated. And I think there's definitely a spectrum that we can exist on as readers as far as how much detail do we need in a world to make it believable, to make it immersive. It's not the first time that Andrew's been compared to Tolkien in this way, in the kind of sense that it is a storyteller taking us through a book. You're getting a lot of detail about the people, about the land, about the holy order that exists in the story and is a major part of it. There's such a storyteller vibe to it. It feels like you're sitting around a fire and there's a bard who just is so passionate about telling the story and all of the details of the world. I'm the type of reader that I feel like I don't need that level of detail, but I really appreciate and am impressed by the detail level. And it really was a cool way to experience storytelling. And it's something that I think I don't pay enough attention to. And this was a great challenge for me as a reader to stop and say, you know what? I really love this level of detail. And it's one of those things where no matter if you are the type of person that really likes to dive in and pay attention to every little thing, or you're the type of person that's just here for the characters and the world kind of fills in the blurred edges behind you, I honestly think both types of readers would really enjoy this book. That kind of dives into the writing style a little bit, so I'm not going to go too much farther into that. There's just a ton of description. There's a ton of detail. There's a ton of the flora, the fauna, the things that the travelers have with them. There's just such a crazy level of detail, and all of the religious order within the book and all of the different parts of that and how they interact with each other. And you honestly just don't see it in modern fantasy as much anymore. And that's where I'm going to kind of overall say about this, that if you're truly looking for a modern classic fantasy, I cannot think of a book I would recommend more highly than Deathless Beast, because it's written in a modern style, but has all of those details and a lot of the classic, tropes that we love in classic fantasy, but it's twisted in the most authentic modern way I think I've seen. So when people say, oh, I want a modern classic fantasy, this is something that I would say fits that on an objective level the most. I feel like I've kind of said everything that I want to say about it. I do have a written review for this book on Goodreads, so I will put that down in the description box below. I have also done a author interview with Andrew Meredith on my channel, so I will put that up in the cards or down in the description or something, wherever. Definitely go watch that, because Andrew talks a lot about his world building process, and I found it really interesting to hear all of the different ways that he dives into his world and kind of builds it up and keeps track of everything. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check out our author interview. I am really looking forward to reading Bone Shroud, which is book 2 in the Collation Saga. I have also read the beginning of Andrew's other series, and that is the Needle and Leaf books, and the first one is called Thrice. I have a dedicated video review for that also up on my channel, so wherever that is, go check that out as well. I hope you guys are having a great week. I hope you are all having 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.